All right, good afternoon. It is Thursday, October 29th, and this is a good time for me to go over some latest news. Currently at the laundromat catching SARS2. So 1028. This is from yesterday. Those of you who have been keeping up with the numbers, know like that yesterday the world broke 500,000 new daily cases. The deaths are going back up. I think they're around 8,000 daily, as we've seen recently. The lockdowns are slowly coming into effect all over the world again. Countries that never locked down before are locking down for the first time. And it's going to be very intense the next couple of months. So the media is already telling people in America here to stock up. And I think some breaking news a couple minutes ago, Walmart is stopping the sales of guns in case of social unrest. So it's going to get quite disturbing pretty soon. So 1028, yesterday's news. France and Germany enact sweeping restrictions to curb rises in cases and hospitalizations. France will reimpose a nationwide lockdown, while Germany will close bars and restaurants and impose other restrictions for a month in a last-ditch effort to protect hospitals from becoming overwhelmed and with virus patients as Europe battles a second wave of the pandemic. For months, European countries have tried to slow the spread of the virus through targeted restrictions aimed at avoiding the tough nationwide lockdowns imposed in the spring. But the measures have not succeeded at halting the surge in cases and hospitalizations, putting more drastic limits on daily life back in play. Not only that, Sweden is hitting record number of cases, hospitalizations, deaths for them. And it's interesting that nobody is really talking about that in the mainstream, because Sweden was hailed as the great successor of herd immunity, but it's a farce. It's all rubbish, and it's gonna be it's gonna be interesting to see the reaction to Sweden coming on a lockdown. They're not doing it, but they're recommending people staying in. So it's only gonna get worse. Portugal on Wednesday made it compulsory for residents to wear a mask outdoors whenever social distancing cannot be guaranteed. The measure, which applies to people aged 10 and up, everybody should be wearing masks, not 10 and up, came into force a day after the country registered its second highest daily rise in cases since the start of the pandemic. Portugal's government also said it would prohibit people from traveling between municipalities from October 30th until November 3, which will cover a long holiday weekend. Now, cases are rising. Deaths are not being reported as bad as you would think, but you have to keep in mind that deaths are underreported. There's a large pile of hundreds of thousands of excess deaths that are not accounted for. There's better treatments now that the virus is a little more understood. As in the beginning, it was a disaster because doctors didn't know how to treat the patients, and the ventilators were popping people's lungs and causing damage and killing people. Because, as I mentioned before, the virus attacks the blood, making your blood unable to take in oxygen. So even though the ventilators are pumping oxygen into you, you're not receiving the oxygen because your blood cannot take it in. Which is why they recommend the use of the ECMO machines, which have been brought up many times during the pandemic. The ECMO machines takes out your blood, puts oxygen in the blood, and then pumps it back into you, which is more effective than a ventilator, but probably more expensive. Belgium, which hosts the headquarters of the European Union, now has one of the highest per capita rates of new cases in the world. The Czech Republic, with similar per capita rates, also imposed a nationwide curfew starting Wednesday. Stores, schools, and restaurants were closed, while masks were made mandatory in all public places. Britain Prime Minister Boris Johnson is also facing calls for a new national lockdown. They're trying really hard not to do that. The government's advisory body, known as SAGE, interesting name, warned him that the second wave could be more deadly than the first, according to the Telegraph. Yeah, like France is already saying also that the second wave will hit harder than the first. Like, a lot of countries are fearing that the second wave, I don't even know if it's really a second wave, but whatever point the pandemic is at in these countries, this is going to reach, supposedly, well, according to them, the deadliest part or stage of it yet. A 46% spike in SARS-2 patients strains the capacities of hospitals in the U.S. Now, keep in mind, even if a lot of people don't die, as I mentioned before, the reason why we're not seeing that many deaths uh, is it's not so much people that die, it's also people who become long haulers, people who have been showing symptoms for months and nobody seems to know why, people who are cripples, can't even work. Pretty much what we saw from the first SARS way back in 2003 was people were never able to fight it off. People even today are still suffering from the SARS outbreak of 2003. They're still out of breath, they can't even work, and it's no surprise that we're seeing this with SARS-2, and we're going to see millions of people like this. That's what I'm seeing happening at this point. And again, scientists still don't know why. They think it has something to do with the virus making the immune system attack itself, even though the virus is not even there anymore. We'll get into that at the end. So anyways, back to... I don't even watch Peacospirity anymore. I just don't see the relevance in that channel anymore. Anyhow, back to the U.S. Hospitals around the United States are reeling from the spread of SARS-2, many of them in parts of the country that initially have been spared the worst. Also, rural areas are getting hit hard too. Places that people didn't think were going to get cases ended up getting outbreaks as well. Approaching the eve of the election, President Trump has downplayed the steep rises in cases, attributing much of it to increased testing. He will never admit that it's bad because the election is right around the corner. He cannot admit that it's bad, so he's going to lie, as he has been saying. He's saying the pandemic is going to end as the cases, hospitalizations, and deaths are going back up in the U.S. But the number of people hospitalized for the virus told a different story, climbing an estimated 46% from a month ago and raising fears at the capacity of regional healthcare systems to respond to overwhelming demand. Now, you would think because of the experience of the beginning of the outbreak, hospitals will be better equipped, but there's a lot of problem getting PPE. There's a lot of problem getting new hires because health workers are scared right now to get hired, and a lot of them are under quarantine. And then you have also others that are protesting the unsafe conditions. So the health system is ripe for a complete total breakdown in several parts of the world. 26 states are at or near record numbers for new infections. More than 500,000 cases have been announced in the past week. Oh, did I say 500 daily? Only in the U.S. Okay. No states are seeing sustained declines in case numbers. And I do want to mention something that a friend of mine from Sweden was saying. The incubation time for this virus could be much longer for many people, which is something that hasn't been talked too much about, but has been reported that up to 2 months have been certain cases where that's how long it took for the incubation period to stop and the symptoms to begin. So that's another thing that isn't talked about that much. And while the escalating case numbers have not been accompanied by a steep rise in deaths, that trend is starting to change. About 800 deaths are now being recorded across the country each day, far fewer than in the spring, but up slightly from earlier this month. Dr. German Hernandez, a nephrologist who has been caring for patients at several hospitals in El Paso, said the situation was so acute that patients on oxygen are being kept in rooms in the trauma area of the University Medical Center. He said that could be devastating in the event of a disaster, such as the August 2019 mass shooting at a Walmart in the city that left 23 people dead. God forbid we have another August 3 shooting because we can't handle it right now, Dr. Hernandez said. We have no buffer. I can never do enough. ICU workers record their anguish as SARS-2 surges. It's just not fair, one note in the shared diary read this week as hospitalizations have soared both in the hospital and across the nation. So over this, and literally nothing makes it better, the healthcare worker wrote. A colleague overwhelmed by it all wrote, anxiety and depression have been kicking my butt lately. During my visit, the unit was a whirl of urgent energy, with scores of medical workers racing to treat about 20 gravely ill people, some of them on ventilators. Staff members went around the room checking oxygen levels and helping some patients move onto their stomachs, a position that can make breathing easier. As the pandemic has intensified, so has Ms. Gord's feeling of helplessness as she sees sick patient after sick patient enter the unit. Officials announced 71 SARS-2-related deaths in Wisconsin on Tuesday, a single-day record for the state. More than 5,300 new cases were identified statewide on one of the state's worst days yet. Mentally, I was really going into a dark, slippery slope, Miss Gore told me. In these last 2 weeks, I really felt it, and I felt it hard. I would be at home and just started crying for no reason. In a span of about 3 hours, 2 patients in the unit had their oxygen levels drop dangerously low, prompting about half a dozen staff members to rush from bed to bed. Both patients were stabilized, a bittersweet victory on that morning, which had begun more painfully. Hours earlier, another virus patient, someone who had been in the unit long enough to be well known and beloved by the staff, had died. As workers rolled a stretcher through the door, the outline of a body visible under a white sheet, tears filled Miss Gord's eyes. I could never do enough, she said. A player pulled from Tuesday's World Series game after testing positive. Moments after Los Angeles Dodgers clinched the World Series title on Tuesday night as their players and coaches mingled excitedly on the field before receiving their trophy, a Fox broadcaster delivered some shocking news. Justin Turner, the Dodgers' longtime third baseman, had been taken out of the game because he had received a positive result on a coronavirus test. But minutes later, Turner was back on the field, holding the trophy, kissing his wife, and mingling with other players, coaches, team officials, and family members. At times, he was wearing a mask. During other moments, including the team's group photo with the trophy, he was not. The Dodgers' star outfielder, Mookie Betts, speaking to reporters on a video call, dismissed concerns about Turner being on the field. "Forget all that," Betts said. "He's part of the team. We're not excluding him from anything." If you remember from my last video, I was in the middle of it when all these fireworks and screaming and shots were going out. It got pretty wild here in LA, but I don't think it was peaceful for them. It was peaceful, majorly, I think. Thieves in Florida steal 6 million medical gloves headed for hospitals fighting the pandemic. A shipping container holding more than 6 million medical gloves was stolen from a supplier in Florida last weekend, leaving 3 hospital systems battling the SARS2 pandemic without some of the crucial equipment that they were waiting for. The gloves, worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, were delivered on Friday to Meglove, the supplier, at its Coral Springs, Florida office about 40 miles north of Miami. The gloves have been running 12 days late from the manufacturer in Malaysia. Meglove's vice president of sales and marketing, Rick Grimes, said on Tuesday. On Sunday, according to surveillance footage, a semi-truck pulled up to the container along with a white pickup truck. The people in the trucks hooked the container to the truck and drove off, Mr. Grimes said, adding that the operation had taken them less than 6 minutes. On Tuesday, the Coral Springs Police Department told Mr. Grimes that the container had been found completely empty in the Miami area, he said. The police did not respond to a request for comment. As to who took the gloves, Mr. Grimes said, that's the million-dollar question. The Marshall Islands in the Pacific has confirmed its first SARS-2 cases, ending the archipelago's status as one of the few nations in the world to remain virus-free. As a result, the remote island nations and territories of Kiribati, Micronesia, Nauru, Palau, Samoa, Tonga, Tuvalu, and Vanuatu are believed to be still free of the virus. The virus is complicating back to that. It's as we're seeing, the virus is everywhere. It's pretty much everywhere. These places are remote. They almost don't even count. But the virus is everywhere, all over the world. The virus is complicating the election as poll workers test positive and voting sites are closed. I mentioned this weeks ago, actually. MTA service cuts could cost the New York metropolitan area 450,000 jobs by 2022, a report finds. New Jersey's largest city shuts down again as virus cases surge. Second SARS-2 stockpiling wave may be coming, and it goes beyond toilet paper, cleaning supplies. Now, roughly 57% of shoppers are considering restocking due to growing fears of a potential second wave of SARS-2, which could lead to another round of bare store shelves. Pretty close to that right now. If you're in the U.S., you should probably go restock right now. I think I'm going to go Saturday or Sunday. I think, because I have to work. The Trump administration's SARS-2 testing czar warned Wednesday that local governments may be forced to impose draconian measures if Americans don't start taking safety precautions seriously and the SARS-2 crisis worsens. What did he mean by that? New SARS-2 cases surging in 4 Southern California counties. Yeah, so here where I'm at in LA, the cases are going back up again. And yesterday, for the first time, there was talks of California possibly going back into a lockdown. I think it's going to happen. I think it's just a matter of days at this point before that gets announced. Wall Street plunges and Dow closing 900 points as lockdown fears accelerate. Brazil's health regulator, Anvisa, has authorized the import of raw materials from Chinese company Sinovac for the production of its SARS-2 vaccine. 5 more Spanish regions, including Madrid, are closing their borders ahead of the All Saints' Day long weekend to try to halt a surge in SARS-2 infections. About 6 million people traveled to other parts of Spain during the All Saints' Day holiday, and as a result, the regional government of Madrid plans to close the region's borders from Friday until November 2nd, said the head of the region's government, Isabel Diaz Ayuso. Yeah, so I mean, the people of Spain don't care. These 6 million that are going to travel, they're going to travel unless they're stopped. Now, there are a few that are going to stay in, but for the most part, people just don't care about the pandemic. It's too much SARS-2 fatigue. People are just fed over it. People know that it's bad, they just fed over it. And that's very, very dangerous. SARS-2 has swept through Milan's prestigious La Scala Opera House, with 18 singers and 9 musicians testing positive for the disease, an official said. All the members of the chorus were in quarantine along with the third section of the orchestra, while the theater awaited results from tests of other staff members. The new lockdown measures in France will stay in place until December 1st, President Macron said. French President Macron, second wave of SARS-2 likely to be worse than the first wave. There it goes. It's going to get worse. I mean, we all knew, we had been hearing for months that the winter was going to be bad, and that's exactly what's happening. The number of new cases recorded across Europe and beyond continued to grow, with new highs in cases or deaths in many countries, including Italy, Poland, Czech Republic, Germany, Switzerland, Greece, Portugal, Iran, and Russia. Yeah, I hadn't never really heard much about Switzerland and Poland, but the past week or two they've really been blowing up. AFP said that Tuesday's daily toll of more than 500,000 infections was a new high, a figure that is likely to be overshadowed by Wednesday's, once the total is known. The current total for today in odometers ends in, 2 hours and 18 minutes. I might do today's news and record a video later on tonight. We'll see, because I have to get up early tomorrow. But I do plan to go over the world odometer numbers next time, which is why I didn't do it this time. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen set out a raft of new measures. Her key coronavirus advisor, Peter Piot, said that the new resurgence in the virus had come back because we kind of relaxed too much. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa went into self-isolation after a guest at a diner he attended on Saturday tested positive. He is showing no symptoms, according to the government. The death tolls in Canada and Turkey went past 10,000. In Argentina, it went past 30,000. Canadian PM Justin Trudeau said this is going to be a tough winter, as I said 1,000 times before. After Iran's record daily death toll was announced earlier, the health ministry spokesman Sima Sarat Larry told the country in a televised address that Iran was in a full-scale war with the coronavirus. She said 27 of Iran's 31 provinces were currently red, the highest risk level in the country's color-coded scale. In neighboring Iraq, a lockdown imposed early in the pandemic has been dropped for economic reasons, even as deaths have topped 11,000 out of 460,000 confirmed cases. Jordan recorded its highest total on Tuesday, with more than 3,800 cases and 44 deaths, reaching a total of 668 dead out of 58,855 declared cases of SARS-2. Italy has registered 24,991 new SARS-2 infections over the past 24 hours, the health ministry said on Wednesday. Reuters notes that the latest figure is a record high and up from the 21,000 on Tuesday, as cases in the northern region of Lombardy surged. See, the thing about Italy is they're going back into lockdown, and the people are protesting about, freedom, and, I can understand people are mad because this second lockdown can kill their, small businesses. People are trying to get education, people are trying to get a job. This makes it more complicated. But people who are protesting because it's all about their freedom, you had all these months to isolate as a people in Italy. You guys had the chance to isolate, social distance, wear a mask, boost your immune system, stay alert, stay informed, and chose not to. And now this is happening. Well, you deserve it. That's really all I can say. I feel bad for the few that actually tried to stay safe and now are caught up in all this. EU leaders urge to aid transfer of SARS-2 patients between member states. Citing devastating pandemic impact, Boeing to lay off 7,000 more workers. Grim outlook for return of New York City's 1 million office workers amid SARS-2. Yeah, it's not... I didn't even know that New York City had 1 million office workers working from home this whole time. So you can imagine what can happen once they all go back to work. Nearly 500,000 OC Orange County residents have already had SARS-2. Latinos hit hardest, UC Irvine study shows. Yeah, whenever you see a antibody test being done anywhere in the world, it always hints that the real case numbers are multiples higher than they really are. So antibodies are a very scary thing that I don't see talked about much. Like, for example, I think 2 or 3 months ago, antibody studies had shown that a huge amount of people here in LA had already had it. It's just that the testing just fell behind. Now, let's see. So, despite the growing SARS-2 case counts in May, you will soon be able to sit at a bar for the first time in months. Physics in the pandemic. This coronavirus has created an employment crisis across the country. This lethal SARS-2 pandemic has not just created a medical emergency, but also an employment crisis across the country. Since the outbreak of SARS-2, so many hospitals canceled job interviews. They were not ready to employ new staff and were trying to manage with the existing workforce. The absence of flights, trains, and other modes of public transport during the lockdown made it impossible anyway. 7 months into the pandemic, and many nursing homes across Texas still do not have enough protective equipment to keep their residents safe. Now, is this the one that mentions? I don't remember if I put it here, but there was one nursing home where everybody in the nursing home got it, and it got shut down, which shows you they're just not doing enough, nowhere near enough. Now, a new report from the consumer advocate group TextPRG said since the shortages have actually become much worse. TextPIRG analyzed data submitted by 15,000 nursing homes nationwide to the Centers of Medicare and Medicaid Services and found more than 20% of nursing homes had less than 1 week's supply of one or more type of PPE, which represents a critical shortage by industry standards. These are our parents, our grandparents, and they have literally been swept under the rug as if their lives don't matter, she said, according to the Centers of Medicare and Medicaid Services. More than a quarter of all SARS-2 deaths in the U.S. have come from people living in nursing homes. I still want to know what happened last year. In the beginning of 2019, in June, and I think it was Vermont, maybe Virginia, where there were mysterious pneumonia outbreaks in nursing homes. They never got to the bottom of that. And they announced 2 months ago that they were going to investigate them, and I never heard back from it. So it leads you to believe, when exactly did this virus start infecting people? I think it could have possibly been before October of last year. I don't think we'll ever know at this point, really. According to so huge inappropriate gatherings in Solano County, and just to add to what I was saying, there was also the mysterious vaping deaths that happened around the end of last year, October, where kids that were using the vapes were catching some pneumonia, some unexplained mystery. Like, if you were to read the headlines, they actually called it mystery pneumonias killing kids that were using vapes. And though people tried to link it to the contents of the cartridges, the CDC still doesn't know what exactly it was. I think the last time I checked up on it was maybe 2 or 3 months ago, and the CDC still doesn't know what was going on. But people that were using these vapes were ending up on ventilators and dying of mysterious pneumonia. So there's a lot of strange things that happened last year concerning pneumonia deaths, and just questioning when exactly this outbreak started. Huge inappropriate gatherings in Solano County drove a SARS-2 surge that may reverse reopening the region. Huge inappropriate gatherings in Solano County drove a SARS-2 surge that may reverse reopening. The region could become the first in the Bay Area to slide backward into California's most restrictive tier. Solano County could slide backward into California's most restrictive reopening tier as soon as next week, a first for any county in the Bay Area, where SARS-2 restrictions in many places continue to loosen this week. Several huge inappropriate gatherings by county residents in recent weeks were largely to blame, said Solano County Health Officer Dr. Bella Matias. They include a funeral attended by more than 300 people, plus a wedding, a christening, and an event at a private ranch attended by dozens not practicing precautions such as social distancing, Matias said. Now, all these people basically that did this, they deserve it. You know, what were you thinking doing something like this? It's what we're what, 9 months in, 10 months in, 11 months in, and people are still doing these, thinking that nothing's gonna happen. It can't possibly happen to them. It's not going to kill them. It's not going to potentially cripple them for life. Should have known better. Hopefully this will teach you a lesson, assuming you live long enough to learn it. So CVG report number 100. I've done 100 of these. Can you believe how much time I've wasted doing all this stuff? Anyways, by the way, those of you who I don't know if anybody from CVG actually watches these videos, but those of you who don't know, CVG is a forum, I guess, or actually no, it's more like an image board, specifically an anime image board, but it's a part deep within it that is probably one of the more rational areas in the board where people talk about this virus. And there's a few of us have been there for a long time discussing it. You know, I met quite a few friends on that board, and all of this information that I'm telling you, I've shared there. And you know, there's a lot of smart people that are there. There's a lot of people who are PhD scientists, medical workers who post there. And there's also a lot of people who just like to just have fun and try to pretend they're CIA and mess around. I mean, it's quite a place to be, but I wouldn't recommend it unless you are aware of what anime and what trolling on the internet is and things like that. But anyhow, I have learned a lot from that board, and I've done my best to share information to these people. So a shout out to Polenbro and, you know, the Swedish guy, and the Ukrainian VPN Maverick, and all these other people. So anyways, back to this CVG report number 100, permanent immune system malfunction. Some SARS2 survivors have antibodies that attack the body, not virus. Some survivors of SARS2 carry worrying signs that their immune system has turned on the body, reminiscent of potentially debilitating diseases like lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, a new study has found. At some point, the body's defense system in these patients shifted into attacking itself rather than the virus, the study suggests. The patients are producing molecules called autoantibodies that target genetic material from human cells instead of the virus. This misguided immune response may exacerbate severe SARS-2 and may also explain why so-called long haulers have lingering problems months after their initial illness has resolved and the virus is gone from their bodies. The findings carry important implications for treatment. Using existing tests that can detect autoantibodies, doctors could identify patients who might benefit from treatments used for lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. There is no cure for these diseases, but some treatments decrease the frequency and severity of flare-ups. You never really cure lupus. They have flares, and they get better, and then they have flares again, she said. And that may be something to do with autoantibody memory. Dr. Marshak Rostein, Dr. Iwasaki, and dozens of other teams are closely studying the immune response of SARS-2. Given the ease of testing for autoantibodies, it may soon become clear whether the antibodies were identified only because the researchers went looking for them, or whether they represent a more permanent alteration of the immune system. It is not clear to me what it all means at this point, Dr. Pepper said. It's going to take a little bit of time to understand if this is something that's going to lead to downstream pathology. So this is the latest news as of yesterday. I'll see what happens later on when I get home. I think it's better for me to make these videos a lot earlier, because lately I've been doing them when I'm like half asleep and about to go to sleep. It's barely gonna be 4 p.m. so I have more energy than usual, despite that I'm yawning. So the last thing I want to say is that the mainstream media is reporting more on the brain damage. So we know that this virus is a neurotropic virus. We know that this virus can travel and go to your brain and have fun there and party. And we know because we've seen endless autopsies where they found this SARS-2 inside of the fluid of the brain, all this and that. And what's going on? People, it's making people's brains degrade, age faster. It's causing confusion. Uh, it's causing anger in people. It's behaving similar to like rabies when as it's inside the body and all that. It's also similar to measles in the way that it behaves. But the point I'm making is that the brain damage is being talked about more and more and more. And once the brain damage really becomes mainstream, people are gonna panic because this thing. I mean, I've seen videos of people who had this in their brain, and the look on their face. There was this one lady had this look on her face. I just it creeps me out. I constantly remember it, and it just creeps me out. Just she had this grin on her face, but she was gone. She wasn't really there anymore. She was still alive, but her brain was cooked. Anyhow, yeah, the brain damage is just terrible. But people just we look at all this information and we tell ourselves, wow, we're keeping informed. But the truth is, the majority of people don't even know any of this stuff. So we have to tell people that this is happening. We have a responsibility to keep people informed, because things here that you would think everybody knows, that seems so easy to understand, people don't know. Since going back to work, people that I've worked with, they have no idea any of this is happening. They don't know. They don't know. They have no idea how infectious it is, what it can do. They have no idea, And it's just if you really want to protect people, just help them stay informed. Really. So that's all I have to say for today. Might be back on tomorrow. I'll be busy the next 3 hours or so, looking at the news, compiling new info, catching up with some stuff. If you can, please share the video with somebody, and a like if you can. Make a comment, subscribe, show it to somebody. Ask questions if you'd like. I do this for free. I want to keep everybody informed. I have not made a single penny off of this. It's just something that I do because this is the happening of our lifetimes, and we should stay informed and keep other people informed. So thank you for listening. I'll see you on the next video.